Okay, good evening, everyone. We're continuing over here in our weekly PARSHAS shir. When we come tonight to PARSHAS SHELACH, which is probably one of the most troubling PARSHAS sedras that we have in the entire Chumash, because based on what takes place in this week's Parsha, it spells the utter destruction for the Jewish people. And it's the event which takes place which will forever determine the future and the travels and the exiles and the destruction that will seem to be something that follows Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, along wherever we go in this world. And this is the story of the Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies, where they decided to send out 10 of the most loftiest, greatest men of that generation to go and to represent the people and to head out into the land of Israel to spy it out to see what kind of a land it was. And when the men came back from their journey and they had with them all of the reports, which should have been only the best, only the most positive, talking about the holy land of Eretz Yisrael, which was the dream of the Jewish people since they were slaves in Egypt. They come back, and after their few nice words about the falafel and the shawarma and how nice it was to go out on the waters over there in the Dead Sea and float on the top, then they say, but Ephes, however, we have to tell you all the terrible things which took place over there. And the Jewish people begin crying, and they're wailing, and the tears go on incessantly throughout the night. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Aten bechisam bechir shachinam. You cry tears for no reason tonight. So I swear to you, says Hashem, that for the rest of the history of the Jewish people, this will be a night of bechia, of crying. And that was the night of Tisha B'Av, as we know, which is the night that is ominously familiar as the night in which the Beis Hamikdash, the first one and the second one, was destroyed, and so many other terrible things have befallen the Jewish people on that day in history. And the question arises, which all of the Mefarshim, all the commentators, the Rishonim, the earliest of commentators, Chazal, the sages, everybody would like to know, what was so terrible about this request that the Meraglim, that the Jewish people came and asked Moshe Rabbeinu, let us go and spy out the land. We're heading into a new country. We never saw it before. We know that there's 7 nations that are occupying it right now. Most likely they're not going to be so excited when the Jewish people come thundering into town and say this land belongs to us. So let's go spy it out. Let's see what it's like. Let's see the landscape. Let us take a look at the enemies, at their armies, make sure see if they're strong, are they weak, do they have guerrilla warfare, do they work, how do they work? And then once we come into the land, we'll know what we're up against, we'll be able to fight the battles properly, we'll be able to conquer the land easily, and then we'll live happily ever after. I mean, if you would go out to war with a nation, you would certainly study their tactics, you would go through the annals of history with all the battles that they ever fought. You would study that commander-in-chief. You would see what his victory level was like, how often he won the war, what was his style, what was his tactics, which way did he go about it. You wouldn't just walk blindly into a country that you know is armed to the teeth with ammunition and say, okay, here we are, let's fight. You do your due diligence. You'd find out if it was a land that you felt that you had the ability to go and to conquer. You'd make sure that you had all of the army with all the officers, the Navy SEALs, and everything in between all ready to go. And you would design your warfare and your tactics and your strategy. And then you would head into the land, head into that country, and you begin to do what you have to do to conquer and take over the land to make it belong to you. So the land of Eretz Yisrael at that time did not belong to Klal Yisrael. There were 7 foreign nations that were ruling that land, that they were reigning supreme over there. So what's so terrible about the Jewish people if they decide that, you know what, Hashem, And they came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, Moshe, why don't you send us into the land ahead of time? Take the best of all of the tribes. You'll take the Anoshim. You'll take the great men, the tzaddikim of every tribe. Send them in, the righteous, so they'll only see the good. And let them come back and tell us what they see. And then we'll know how to go and fight the enemies. We'll know how to win the land. We'll know how to conquer Eretz Yisrael, so it should be ours forever and ever and ever. And no other nation will ever contend with us that it belongs to them. So the pasuk says, "Shlach lecha anoshim v'yasur esa Eretz Canaan." Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu. He said, if you want them to go and send spies into the land, I'm not telling you to do such a thing. You send the spies. V'yasur esa Eretz Canaan, and let them examine the land, spy out the land of Canaan. Asher ani noisei livnei Yisrael, that I have given to the Jewish people. Hashem says, I gave it to you already. The land is already yours. You don't need to check it. You don't need to see it. You don't need to know what's going on over there. It's the land, ani noisei livnei Yisrael, that I'm giving to the children of Israel. It's their land. Well, you want to go and spy it out? Go ahead. Says Rashi over here, L'daitcha. Moshe, if you are sending out spies over here, it is L'daitcha. It's all according to your decision. Ani eini mitzavi lecha, because I'm not commanding you, says Hashem, to send out these spies. Im tirtza, if you want to, shlach, you can send them. Lefi shebo Yisrael, because the Jewish people came. What is this whole discussion between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu? Usually it works the following. Hashem has something that he wants Moshe to do. So v'yidaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. Hashem calls the Moshe Rabbeinu and he tells him, go and command the Jewish people to do this. Tell the Jewish people to do this. Tell the Jewish people to do this. Over here, says the Torah, even though that v'yidaber Hashem al Moshe lemor, that Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, I'm not commanding you right now, Moshe. There is no reason at all to send out the spies. You want to? You see redeeming value and quality to their claims of wanting to go and see the land ahead of time? That's your decision, Moshe, and that's what you're doing for the people. I'm not telling you, Eini mitzav lecha, I refuse to take responsibility for the mishap that is going to take place over here. And Rashi writes over here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told the Jewish people, he said that this land that I'm giving to you over here, it's ani amarti lehem shehi taiva, it's a good land. If Hashem tells you that it is good, so then you have nothing at all to worry about. Now, what does good mean? Good does not just mean you can grow some very good grapes in Eretz Yisrael. Good doesn't mean that they have very nice boating in a lot. Good does not mean that in Yerushalayim, HaKodesh, in the holy city of Jerusalem, the Avirah, the weather is so beautiful all the time. That's not what good means. Good means Eretz Toiva Hi, it is a good land. And everything about that land is good. Which means if I, HaKodesh Baruch Hu, tell you that it's good, you have nothing to worry about. Go in. Go in and take over the land. You're gonna win. You have nothing to fear. Nevertheless, Klal Yisrael was concerned. They were concerned that since they were perhaps not the most skilled nation in warfare that ever was, remember they're coming as slaves out of Egypt. Now they're coming only a few months after receiving the Torah at Har Sinai. They weren't trained in warfare. They weren't soldiers. They didn't have weapons the way that other nations had. And they said, maybe, in fact, it's going to be difficult to go into that land. So Hashem said, you want to send them, Moshe? Send them. It's your call. I don't think that you need to. Now, once that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I don't think that you need to, and that you're saying them on your own volition over here, so then you know that probably you're in pretty big trouble at that point. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu has promised you that it's a good land, if Hashem has told you you have nothing at all to worry about, if God has instructed you, just go forward and march into the land and things are going to work out, so then what are you worried about? And the Mefarshim, the commentators, ask this question of exactly this sin that they did, which began with the sending in of the spies in the land of Israel. Why was it such a terrible, terrible sin? That it was so bad that the Jewish people are punished for all generations, that on that night when the spies came back and they gave their evil reports, and the Jewish people cry and they wail throughout the evening, Hashem says this is going to be a night etched into the history of the Jewish people, that you will cry forever and ever and ever. Now, if they in fact went to the land and they did see giant people there, and they saw that the fruits and the vegetables were gigantic, and they saw that there were a lot of funerals that were going around on that day. So what is so terrible if they come back and they tell over the truth to the Jewish people and say, listen, we're going to go in. We don't have a choice. Hashem told us we're going there. But you should know, it ain't going to be easy. What's so terrible about that? So in order to answer this question, we have to speak about two of the major fundamentals of Judaism tonight. One of them is something called emunah, which in general is translated as faith, but I think that we'll see that it doesn't really mean faith. And the other one is bitachon, which means trust that a person has in that belief that they have in the Ribbono Shel Olam. So let's just start with the first things first. What does it mean to be a maimin? What does it mean to be someone who believes in Hashem? I learned many years ago from a master of Jewish thought whose name is Rabbi Akiva Tatz. And Rabbi Akiva Tatz would speak about these ideas constantly. He was instilling the ideas, the tenets of our faith in the young generation that was looking and seeking and searching to understand Hashem and His Torah. And he says over the following idea, which is a concept, a simple concept for us to be able to grasp. Emunah, what we call faith, it doesn't really mean faith. It doesn't mean that I believe in God. I believe in what He says. And he points out that if a person says, I believe, that means that you are believing in something that you cannot really verify and that you cannot really prove. I believe, you're standing in, I believe that you are behind the other side of the screen that I am talking to right now. I can't see you. Most of your screens are blacked out. All I see is your names. I believe that you're there. Can't see you. Don't know for sure. Seems to be that you probably are because your name is there. But since that I can't see you, but I see that your name is there, I've got to believe that you are there. But I don't know for sure. I give a class on the telephone a couple of times a week. And the way that it works is on my computer screen, I can see all the people that called in. And at the end of the class, everybody starts getting off one by one. So usually at the end of that class, there's about 5 or 10 people that they just miraculously, they never get off the line. And then I say, hello? Hello, is anybody still there? Hello? And then I realize, no, nobody is still there. That's why they're not getting off the line, because they went out of the room. Probably, of course, it takes care of something very important. That's why they're not there anymore. So when we say in our vernacular of belief, belief is in something that I don't really know for sure that it's true. I believe that you are there on the other side of the screen. I believe that right now, standing at the Kaisel, at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, I believe that there's people that are dying. I can't see it, but I believe that there's somebody there who's praying because it makes sense. Usually people are there around this time. But in Muna, but belief, when we use that word in English, that I believe, it means I'm believing in something that I cannot necessarily prove to you is true. Amuna, the word Amuna doesn't mean that I believe in Hashem. Because to say that I believe in Hashem means that I'm believing in something that I cannot verify. I'm believing in someone, some essence, some supernal being that I really don't have a full connection with, and therefore I just believe that it must be that He's around because look at the world. Amuna is not the word which means faith, but rather Amuna is the word which means faithfulness, being faithful. A young couple gets married, and we give them a bracha. And the blessing is that they should be zeicha, they should merit to build a bayis ne'eman b'Yisrael, a house of faith amongst the Jewish people. Is that a house of Amunah, or it's a house in which there is going to be faithfulness between the husband and the wife, and they will be faithful in their commitments to Hashem and to His Torah? An uman is a worker, a skilled worker. A skilled worker is not someone that we're not sure, does he do the job or not do the job. He is skilled in his work. He knows what he is doing. When he sits down with you and he explains to you, he's going to do this over here on that pipe, and he's going to do this over here in this area of the house, and he's going to fix things like this in this way. He is talking from experience. He knows what he is talking about. I'm not putting my faith in the skilled worker. Rather, I have faithfulness in him that he knows what he's doing. And therefore, it's not that I believe that he's going to do a good job. I can see from the pictures, and I can call up his people that are his references, and I'll find out if this man does a good job or not. When we say that we have amunah, that we believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so it's not a blind faith which is grasping for straws, trying to figure out who is the Rebbeinu Shalom, who is God. Rather, our amunah, our belief is that we are being faithful to the Creator of the universe, who we have worked in our lives, which is the goal of our life, to work as much as we can to develop the well springs of faith, of knowledge and wisdom and clarity and experience and connection with Hashem as we possibly can. And therefore the basics of Hashem's existence, the obvious fingerprint which stamps the entire universe, the words that he teaches us inside of his Torah, the experiences that we have in our own lives where we are able to see the hand of God in our life, all of that gives us the ability to be faithful in Hashem. Not that we are believing blindly, trying to attach ourselves to a greater image of what God is, but rather in that which we are able to see in front of us. That is where our faith, that is where our amunah begins. And we are trying to become skilled in the area of being ma'aminim, of being this skilled worker in the area of faith. Again, not that it's blind, and not that I'm believing in something that I don't know, but rather I need to recognize that which I do know, and in that I'm going to be faithful to Hashem. And here begins the issue that the Torah has with the Meraglim, with the spies and the Jewish people who asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu who asked Moshe, please send the spies into the land of Israel. Because the next level that a person is supposed to reach in their life is something called bitachon. Bitachon is the level that seems to come after our amunah, after our faith. Faithfulness is intact to Hashem. And there's a beautiful sefer called the Maspik L'Ovdei Hashem, which was written by Avraham ben Harambam, Avraham the son of the Rambam. And he writes in this book about bitachon, about what it means to trust in Hashem, the following idea. The ikar habitachon, the main idea of bitachon, of trusting in Hashem, who chizuk ha'emunah, is strengthening one's emunah, one's faithfulness to Hashem. Ki Hashem yis'alehu ha'borer v'ha'mefarnes. How do you strengthen your emunah? You have to recognize that Hashem is the creator of the world. U'mefarnes, and He takes care of us. Ha'mechayev v'ha'mesim, He gives life to those that He gives life to. And when people die, Hashem is the one that has taken their lives. V'machli v'marpe. Who is the one that gives sickness? It is Hashem. Who is the one that heals? It is Hashem. Hama'ashir, who is the one who gives riches? It's Hashem. V'maroishesh, who causes poverty, stricken people in this world? It's all the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Kol Mikra Olam, and all of the proceedings of this world. Haklolim v'hapratim, the major ideas, and the pratim, those nuances, those individual packages that a person has. Choizu me'elav, everything, if you look, you'll find that the source of it all is God himself. V'po'alam, he's the one enacting them. Hagoizer aleim u'moitziyim lapoyel, he decrees and he decides how things are going to happen in this world. U'moitziyim lapoyel, and he will bring them into fruition based upon his hashara, based upon his evaluation of the circumstances. Says the Sefer HaMaspik, what is bitachon? Bitachon is trust in Hashem is when I strengthen the foundations of emunah, of the faithfulness that I have in Hashem. When I recognize how everything that is going on in this world, when I see that everything from the beginning of time and everything going on in my life and all the details around me, and in the public world, in the private world, in the family, in the community, in the universe, when I recognize and I see and I continue to see that everything ultimately is Hashem at the bottom of it or at the top of it, so then I am boiteach, I begin to expand in what's called my trust in Hashem. Somebody who trusts in Hashem is willing to act in different ways. For example, children, if they want to develop healthy and normally, they must trust in their parents. A child who is learning how to walk, why is it that he is willing to get back up after he falls flat on his face and he's crying? Because his parents, who he knows love him so much, they've been smothering with hugs and kisses and love since he's 1.5 years old or 2 years old when he's getting ready to walk. So he knows that he trusts them, that he believes in them, that they care about him. So therefore, when they hold his hands and then he falls flat on his face, he doesn't lose his trust in his parents. He looks at his parents and he feels them picking him back up again. And then he sees them pull back a little bit. And then they're telling him, come, come, come. And he forgets for that moment that he just fell flat on his face. And with that trust that he has in Hashem, because he knows them so well, and he believes in them so much, that they care so much about him, he takes that step forward. And this time, instead of one step, he gets 2 steps, and then boom, once again, flat on his face. But the faithfulness that he has to his parents, it never wavers. And therefore, we get him back up again. And we walk a few more steps back. And now it's 3 steps and 4 steps. And before you know it, you've got a terror on your hands who is running around the house and he's getting himself into everything. How did he get there? How could he stand back up on his feet after you, Tati and Mommy, made him fall on his face? Because he knows that you love him. And he knows that you care about him. And he knows that as you hugged him and you kissed him and you bathed him and you fed him and you nourished him and you sang him songs and you put him on a horseback ride on your lap, so too he knows that when you are trying to get him to walk, that's also part of the relationship and part of the experience. And therefore, because how much he believes in you, because of what he knows about you, what you have shown and demonstrated to him already, and he feels the security of that relationship, therefore he's willing to get back up and fall on his face 1,000 more times until he's ready to start walking all on his own. Bitachon is when I begin to stretch my emunah. Bitachon, trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is when I take the relationship that is so sacred to me, the knowledge that I have of the Rebbeinu Shalom, that I alone am able to enjoy, because it's an intimate relationship and connection nobody else in the world shares besides me and Hashem. It's my studying. It's my awareness. It's seeing the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my life time and time again with something that we call hashgacha pratis, divine intervention. When I live like that and I see that and I breathe that, so then I'm willing to stretch my emunah to the next level. What does it mean to stretch it, to enhance it, to elevate it? That means that I'm willing to act upon the emunah, upon the faithfulness that I have in Hashem. Like the child who is willing to walk and fall on their face because they know with great certainty that their parents love them, and they know that their parents would not try to hurt them. So too, when a person has emunah, when they have real belief, which again is being faithful to the knowledge and the awareness that we have of Hashem, then we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to hurt us. We know that whatever Hashem has in store is always going to be for the best. The people came to the Moshe Rabbeinu and they said, Moshe, we're not sure that we can handle such a thing, go into a nation we never saw before. How are we going to battle them? How are we going to fight them? Let's go spy out the land. Hashem said, I'm not telling you to go. Because if you ask me, there's no reason to go. Eretz Toivehi, it's a good land. It is a good land and you have nothing to worry about. Explain our commentators the following. Which Klal Yisrael, which nation are we talking about over here? We're talking about the Jews who went from 210 years of slavery, where they were all but forgotten. They were left to drown in their misery in the quicksand of the impurities of Egypt. And in a flash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns everything around. And he comes with one plague after another. And he reworks the entire creation in front of the eyes of the Jewish people. All for one reason that we've spoken about before in these classes, like the Ramban writes. The Ramban says the reason that Hashem made all of the plagues the way that he did was to educate Klal Yisrael on who he is. To educate them that they should know there's a creator in this world. And he knows what's going on in this world. And he is intimately involved in every detail of this world. So that by the time that the 10 months of all the plagues was over, Klal Yisrael would once again be ma'aminim, they would believe with faithfulness in Hashem. And sure enough, that's what happened. Their enemies were destroyed. They went through the splitting of the sea. They watched all the enemies drown who tried to kill them and destroy them in the life that they had as slaves in Egypt. And now they're running through the wilderness 49 days. They come to Mount Sinai, they receive the greatest gift of all, the Torah. Hashem speaks to them face to face. We're talking about a nation that experienced revelation of Hashem's presence more than any other generation in the history of all of Klal Yisrael. We're talking about a generation that experienced first-hand knowledge of God more than any other generation that ever lived before or afterwards in our vast history. We are talking about a generation that knew one thing, and that is Hashem never forgets about the Jewish people. And he continues to love us all of the time, no matter how distant it is that he seems. But when he wants to bring us back, he's right there. So now they're standing on the edge of Eretz Yisrael, the nation who knows it all. Hashem revealed himself to them. He spoke to them. They were lifted up to the level of great prophets. They were a nation who walked through the waters as they parted, and there were hundreds of miracles taking place as they were going through the splitting of the sea. They had not a single doubt in their mind, is there a God? And is he our God, and he watches over us, and he loves us, and he cares about us? Not a single doubt. And now they're coming to Eretz Yisrael. And Hashem says, go forward. March into the land. There's enemies, you'll conquer them. You'll need to start planting and sowing and plowing. You'll take care of that too. You don't have to worry about it. You need water, you'll find water in the ditches over there. You need food, you'll grow it, you'll farm it, you'll herd it, you'll shecht it, you'll put it on your plate. Don't worry. Everything is going to work. Oh, you're sad that you're going to leave the wilderness? There won't be bread falling from the sky anymore. There won't be the well of Miriam that's traveling with you. Your clothes are going to start wearing out. The temperature's not going to be exactly right the way that you like it. Don't worry. Everything's going to work out, says Hashem. You trust me, right? I took care of you up until this point, didn't I? I took you out of Egypt. I saved you from the nation whose hands you were in for all those years. I split the sea for you. And I gave you the Torah at Har Sinai. No other nation got such special nation privileges as you did. And now I'm ready to walk you into the Holy Land, and you will live happily ever after. Mashiach is going to come. The world is going to reach perfection. That's the end. Did I prove myself to you yet, says Hashem? Do you have enough belief in me? You believe in Hashem and Moshe is servant. We're not going to steer you wrong. Say the Jewish people, of course, we do believe, and of course, yes, we trust, but what would be so terrible if we just go in and we see a little bit what's going on in the land of Israel? Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you just made a very big mistake. Like a child who doesn't start questioning his parents when they're holding their arms out again and saying, come, come, come and walk. Like that little kid who's learning how to ride his bike when he's 4 or 5 or 6 years old without the training wheels. And his parents are running behind him and they're pushing, they're letting go, and he falls to the side. He gets back up again. And his parents push him again and he falls and he gets back up again. Until he has the rush of excitement that he's riding the bike all by himself. Till he realizes he can't stop and he crashes into the wall. But he's okay. Because he knows that the parents that have taken care of him for 4 or 5 or 6 years of his life, they're also doing the best over here for him. Says Hashem, you don't trust in me enough to march into Eretz Yisrael? What are you asking for? You want spies? Send in the spies. L'daitcha, it's your decision. It's not mine, says Hashem. I would never, ever, ever tell you to do such a thing, because that shows a lack of trust that you have in me, which means you are not stretching and expanding your emunah the way that you should at this juncture. No other nation experienced what you experienced. Nobody heard what you heard at Har Sinai. Nobody saw what you saw. Nobody knows me as personally as you, the nation, does. And now you're asking to send in spies? I told you already, it's Eretz Toivahi. It's a good land. You have nothing to examine. Go. Say the Mefarshim, the fact that Klal Yisrael decided at the end of the day to send the spies in was a great sign of a breach in the Amunah and the Bitachon that this generation was supposed to have in the Rebbeinu Shalom. And when you do that, you cannot win. The Pasuk tells us in Tehillim, we say it in Hallel. The verse tells us that it speaks about all the idols of this world. Atzabeim, Kesef, Izov, Masei, they Adam. Their idols are made out of silver and gold, and they're the handiwork of man, which means they're meaningless. Pelem v'lo yidaberu, they have a mouth and they can't speak. Einayim lem v'lo yiru, they have eyes but they cannot see. Oznayim lem v'lo yishmo, they have ears but they cannot hear. Af lehem, they have a nose v'lo yirichun, they can't even smell. Yedeyim v'lo yemishun, they have arms, they have hands, they can't do anything with them. Ragleim v'lo yalechu, they have legs but they can't walk anywhere. The idols of this world, man-made objects and images, graven images, they're powerless. They have nothing there. And the truth of the matter is that Klal Yisrael is really not so different. What is our own intrinsic power? What is our might? And maybe this is what the Meraglim were asking. What might do we have? Power to go and fight against 7 armies all at once. We're not so much different than the statues that are powerless. We're human beings, flesh and blood. However, the verse says, Yisrael, Klal Yisrael, B'tach b'Hashem, trust in Hashem. Why? Because Ezra umaginam, who he is your strength, he is your helper, umaginam, and he is your shield for you. Which means, Klal Yisrael, you have to recognize in your life you have absolutely nothing at all to worry about. Everything that you need, all of the strength, all of the courage, all of the smarts, all of the talent in warfare and tactics, all that you will need, it's all coming from the source itself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The same God that rescued you, the same one that lifted you up, the same one who took care of you on the eagle's wings. He's the one that's going to march you into the land of Israel. You're asking for spies? What happened to Yisrael b'tach b'Hashem, to trusting in Hashem? If you don't trust in Hashem the proper way, it's all going to fall apart after that. There's a beautiful ma'aseh I saw recently of a Jew in Eretz Yisrael. He's a chassid, I believe he was a Yerushalmi from an old Jerusalem family for many generations already. We'll call him Reb Moshe. And unfortunately, Reb Moshe came down with a very debilitating disease that just wiped him out from all of his strength and all of his abilities, to the point where it took away his ability to speak. It took away his bodily functions and his movements. He couldn't even barely move his hands. Couldn't smell, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything anymore, couldn't walk. He was confined to a bed. And one day his son was sitting by his father's bedside, trying to find some words of encouragement. And one of Reb Moshe's great friends, Reb Baruch, came to pay him a visit. And Reb Baruch comes in and he sees his friend lying on the bed, motionless, can't even lift a finger. And the son and his friend are trying to find the right words to say. What can you do to encourage this man over here? What can you do? So he motions to his son. Reb Moshe is lying in the bed. He motions to his son to bring the sitter that's sitting by the side of the bed. And with whatever feeble strength he has, he turns to this particular part of Tehillim. And he starts pointing with his little finger, whatever he can. And they read the words out loud. Pelehem v'lo yedaberu, a mouth that cannot speak. He can't speak. Einayim lehem v'lo yiru, and he's pointing his lips to his eyes. He has eyes. He was almost blind by this time. He can barely see. Oznayim lehem, he points to his ears. V'lo yishma, but he can't hear. Af lehem v'lo yerichu, he points to his nose. He can barely smell. Yideyim v'lo yamishu, his hands, they don't work anymore. And Ragleim, he points to his legs. He can't move. And the son and his friend are sitting there watching. What is he trying to say? Is he saying Nebuch on him? He can't do anything anymore. But then he points emphatically with all the energy that he has. Yisrael b'tach b'Hashem. But the Jewish people, we trust in Hashem. Because Ezra umaginam, who? Because Hashem is our shield. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is our protection. And He is our helper. And the son and the friend realized that what this man was saying at that moment was that he might not have eyes to see, nor ears to hear, nor legs to run, nor hands to handle things with. But he has the most important and valuable thing in the world, and that is bitachon. That is the trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that wherever you are in life, you are in His hands. You are in His loving embrace. And the sin of the meraglim, of these spies over here was that they failed to recognize just how much they were in the hands of God. After everything that he had done for them, all the places that he had taken them, all the miracles that he had wrought on their behalf, you don't send in spies. If you are faithful to Hashem and he tells you, go, then you go. When they got to the splitting of the sea, Moshe Rabbeinu begins crying and Hashem says, I'm not interested in your tefillahs. I know that you know how to pray. Yeah, but Klal Yisrael, I'm not asking for any lip service right now. Just go. Travel into the water and don't worry, the waters are going to part. Says Hashem, there are certain times in life where the answer is, don't tell me that you believe in me. Don't exercise your belief by standing there for a long time in davening and prayer. Don't try to do extra mitzvahs to show that you're going to find favor in my eyes. If you are Baiteach, if you trust in the Rebbeinu Shalom, then you should stretch that emunah to the next level that you possibly can. And that level of emunah is when you reach the ability to be Baiteach, to trust. Trusting in Hashem means I will follow Hashem. The famous story of the Mir Yeshiva, when they were leaving Europe, so they managed to procure through miracles, I believe over 400 visas for the members of that yeshiva. And they had to travel treacherous ways day and night. They were always running from the law, trying to avoid and to maneuver around the armies. And they had a leader whose name was Rav Chatzkel Levenstein. And every time they had to stop, he would tell them, okay, we're going to stay here for the night. We're not going to move. And in the morning, if it was time, he was like, okay, now we have to travel. They would travel for several days, and we'd get someplace, and okay, now we're going to stay here. We have to stay here. We're not going to move. Stay here for a couple of days. In 2 days' time, we're going to move again. And then they would move. And it went like that throughout the entire time. When they were going from one place to the other place, they always knew exactly when to move and exactly when to stay where they were. And they ended up making it to Shanghai and surviving. And a lot of the Jewry, the Torah Jewry in the world today, comes from those 400 boys who survived from the Mir. So they once asked Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, how did you know? How did you know to move on Monday and sit still until Thursday? How did you know that in the morning we should travel and at night we should stay, we shouldn't go any place? Or how did you know in the night we had to leave in the middle of the night and in the morning we would end up staying in that area over there? He said, well, it was very easy. I had a Rebbe when I was in yeshiva, his name was Rabbi Yeruchim Levovitz. And every night before we were supposed to move this way or that way, Rabbi Yeruchim would come to me in a dream and he would tell me exactly what to do. A person who is boiteach, who trusts in Hashem, I'm not going to tell you, rabbis will come to you in your dreams and tell you exactly what to do. But when you are on the level of bitachon, of trust in the Rebbeinu Shalom, where you've seen him in your life again and again and again and again and again, and you know that he exists, he's right here in front of you, and you feel him in your life, and you see him in your life, and you've done your studying to understand the way that this world runs. They made a calculation in the laws of evolution, just how much chance has to take place in order for evolution to be a real theory. I don't remember the exact number because I can't fathom those numbers in mathematics, but it's something, if you would write on the top of the number, to the millionth or billionth place of probability that one amoeba could ever have developed into the world the way that we have it today. It's an impossibility. An impossibility. I once, many, many, many years ago, took a class, and the class actually was on the theory of evolution. And the teacher was a die-hard evolutionist. She lived evolution. I thought she was going to start like this because she believed so much that she came from the monkeys. Towards the end of the class, one of the last weeks of the semester, she says over the following: you know, there are those who oppose the theory of evolution. Pause. But we're not going to discuss them in this class. A person who has a brain inside of their mind and is able to look at the magnificence of this universe. Mole kol haaretz v'chvoidoi, as David HaMelech says, the entire universe is crying out and singing out Hashem's praises. So you know from the universe there's Hashem. You know from the Torah there's Hashem. You know from your life experience all of those moments that you cannot chalk it up to anything else besides, wow, how did that happen? It happened because Hashem made it happen. And when you see it again and again and again and again and again, you become a person who is not blindly believing in Hashem. You are a person who is faithful to Hashem. And when you are faithful to the Ribono Shel Olam, so then you go into the next level. And the next level is, I am a boiteach, I trust in Hashem. And I'm willing to push the limits of my amunah, of my faith, to do things for His sake because I know that He cares about me. Says the Radak on this verse over here. What does it mean that Yisrael betach b'Hashem? Let's say you don't see enough in your life to trust in God. You're not so familiar with the hand of God in your life. If you look around, you'll find it very easily. But let's just say you're not so familiar. Let's say you don't have the ability to sit and spend many, many years learning and plumbing the depths of our holy works and our books to be able to know in greater detail who God is. There's one other thing that we have in our back pocket over here to help us be boiteach, to trust in Hashem. Atem bidchu b'Hashem, you should trust in Hashem, ki siru, because you see, b'chol hadorot she'avru, in all of the generations that have passed already. Ezram shel Yisrael, Hashem has always been there to help us. Umaginam haya, and He is the shield, He is the guardian of the Jewish people. There has never been a nation, this is really Rav Yaakov Emden writes, the greatest miracle of all time, bigger than the miracles of the plagues, greater than the miracles of the splitting of the sea, greater than the Nisim, the miracles which took place when the Jewish people stood by Mount Sinai. The greatest miracle that Hashem has ever done for the Jewish people is that we are still in the world and we are thriving and we are living today. After there's no nation in history that has gone through as many exiles, as much punishments, as much killing, as much pogroms, as much devastation as we have. No nation. And yet we're still here, and we're still around, and we're still growing, and we're still thriving, and the Torah is still being kept, and our children are still going to school, and we're still gathering together in shuls. And even though in the face of COVID-19, where it has not been easy, if the world can go back to the malls, certainly we can go back to the shuls. If the world can go back to the movie theaters and enjoy some THX surround sound with whistles blowing in your ears and water spritzing from the sky, then yes, we can go back to a class and we can start learning again. The Jewish people have survived in the face of adversity for thousands of years since we became a nation when we left Egypt. How can you explain that? A nation that has lost millions in almost every single generation. How do you explain that? Because Yisrael betach b'Hashem. Because we have a guardian in heaven who is always watching out for us. We have a beloved Father who cares about us. There have to be punishments sometime, and we're not going to go into that in the length of this class right now. And there are consequences for our actions, and sometimes it is severe. Yes, Rahman al-Islam, it is very severe throughout history. But He never cut us off, and He never disbanded our nation, and He never gave us reason fully to give up hope in Him. Rather, in every single period of our long and arduous history, we have always found reason to be maimed that faithfulness in Hashem. The miracles of our survival, the miracles of our existence, the miracles of being a nation that continues to pride itself in Torah and in mitzvahs and in never being forgotten. That, says Rav Yaakov Enden, is the greatest mace, the greatest miracle in history. And perhaps that is what the Meraglim, what our spies, what they were missing. If they would have just put the last year of their life or 210 years of their life into perspective, and they would have realized that as bleak as it looked under the rulership of the Egyptians, as they were enslaved, backbreaking labor, deaths all around them, no hope for a future. And in an instant, the Rebbeinu Shem said, I'm saving you. And he took them out of there. And remember also, 80% of all the Jewish people died in the plague of darkness because they were not yet willing to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and go with bitachon, with trust. So you're talking about the 20% of the Jewish people, the cream of the crop, who went through the revelation of Mount Sinai, and now are in the wilderness, and Hashem says, go into Eretz Yisrael. You're the best. You're wavering in your emunah. You're wavering in your bitachon. You can't go completely in and not ask any questions. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, big mistake. What comes from such a mistake? They come back, they went with the wrong intentions. They come back, and instead of saying the nice things about Eretz Yisrael, instead of saying only the most beautiful things about the land of Israel, they end up saying things that are taken in a very negative, frightening, anxious type of a way to the Jewish people. And that night became a night of tears for all generations. It's why are we crying? We're crying because we were exposed for being a nation who was faithless to Hashem. We were exposed in history at that moment as being a nation that should have had every cause in the world to be boteach, to trust in the Rebbeinu Shalom. And yet we wavered, and we were weak, and we made a mistake. And that is always the downfall in history. That is always the downfall of an individual, when we waver in our faithfulness to Hashem, and unfortunately we show our faithlessness, we show our faithlessness to Hashem by not recognizing His presence in our lives, by not allowing it to ruminate inside of us to see all of the goodness and all of the bracha and all of the kindness of Hashem, by not recognizing that I would not be standing here right now would it not be for Hashem's guidance every single step of the way. And with all of that fails, never forget. As much as Hashem never forgot about you, He did not forget about our nation, not 1 ounce, not 1 second in our history. And that's enough. If you go through history books and you read our miraculous survival in every single exile that we went through, and you see how we have triumphed over the spirit after every single destruction that took place for our nation, that's enough to fill the pages and pages of books that you could write yourself about why you should believe in Hashem and trust in Him. But Hashem says, go, walk forward, go into the wilderness, go into Eretz Yisrael. No spies, no questions asked. I want to leave you off with a miraculous story. The story of our emunah, of our faith, the story of our bitachon, of our trust in the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the story of the eternal love that Hashem has for His people. It was a Shabbos morning in a shul. I believe the shul was in Monsey in New York. And the gabbai of the shul, Mr. Shlomi Kaufman, is looking around the room to see who is he going to give an aliyah, who is he going to call up to the Torah this week. And he's been doing this for the last 20 years of his life. So he's pretty good at it. He sees who has a simcha, who just had a child, who has a yortzeit, who needs to get called up, a guest that came from out of town, who could use a covered or rabbinical figure that's there. He's very good at what he does. And not only is that part of his joy of being the Gabi of the shul, but Shlomi Kaufman is a survivor from the Holocaust itself, where he grew up in Poland, he lost his family, everything, he lost it all. Only miraculously to survive all of that which took place. And he ends up coming to America. And in America, Baruch Hashem, he rebuilds his life, beautiful wife, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, living Torah lives. And so coming to shul on Shabbos, being the Gabbai, standing by the Sefer Torah, which itself is the eternal light of the Jewish people, it's one of his most greatest feelings of the entire week. As he's looking around the room, a man in the back of the room catches his eye. Must be a guest. An older man about his age, short gray beard. He never saw his face before in that shul, but something about him looked very, very familiar. And Shlomi Kaufman is looking deeper and deeper at the man's face. And suddenly the features ring a strong bell in his head. And he realizes that the man is none other than Menachem Reiner, who was his childhood friend from the days in Poland. They grew up in a little shtetl together. They learned in a yeshiva in Bialystok. When the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, came in, the two of them were clinging together in the cattle cars, heading off to their fate in Auschwitz. And they swore to each other when the doors of that cattle car opened up, no matter what's going to happen, we will always remain true best friends in this world. But as the Nazis came in and they began separating everybody, Shlomi and Menachem were separated from themselves. And they would see each other every once in a while in the camps. And they would remind themselves, Shlomi, be strong, Menachem, be strong. We're going to get through this. And when the war was over and the camp was liberated, Shlomi and Menachem still both alive. But they decided to take separate routes in life. Menachem went to Eretz Yisrael. He began his life once anew over there. And Shlomi came to America. And as Shlomi Kaufman is looking, he sees the face of Menachem. He has not seen it in over 40 years since they parted ways after the Auschwitz experience was over. And he decides, I must call my friend up for an aliyah. I'm going to give him Shishi, the 6th aliyah. And as the Torah reading is beginning, the Gabbai's heart is beating faster and faster. He wants to leap across all the rows in that shul and go and hug his friend, Menachem, Menachem. But he wants to wait for that moment when he's going to call him up for an aliyah. And he's thinking to himself, it must be like when Yosef saw his father after all those years. Imagine how was this be reunited like that? How it's going to be to see his friend up close in person. But he's holding on to his emotions. And every aliyah, Yahamod, he calls up this one. And he calls up that one. And he starts sweating beads of sweat on his brow. Because he can't imagine what it's going to be like when his friend realizes who it is. And suddenly he gets to the 6th aliyah. He's shaking. He's trembling. And of course, he never forgot his friend's name, Menachem ben Yehoshua. And he gets to the 6th aliyah and he's standing there. And he's so overwhelmed with emotion, he cannot get the words out. And the congregation is looking at him. They see the sweat coming from his brow. They see that his face is turning white and his hands are trembling. And they start getting nervous. Maybe he's having a heart attack, God forbid. And suddenly Mr. Kaufman turns in the direction of his friend. And he says, Yamod 572000148. And nobody has any idea what he just said. But Menachem Reiner, sitting in the back of the shul, hears those numbers, and he slowly stands up. And he begins walking forward towards the bima. And as Menachem moves forward, slowly staring at Shlomi Kaufman, they begin looking at each other. And these eyes of excitement and wonder are on the faces of both of them. And by this time, the people that are sitting there in the shul, they begin to realize what is going on. And suddenly, with tears coursing down his face, Menachem says, Shlomi, Shlomi, is that really you? And he says, yes, Menachem, it really is, it's me. And the two of them throw their heads on each other's shoulders. And they start saying, ay, 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 ay. Crying and moaning and hugging and embracing. Some of the most emotional moments in their entire life. The entire shul spellbound. Tears coursing down everyone's face. Basking in a moment in where HaKadosh Baruch Hu once again reveals himself to the Jewish people. Two friends into Auschwitz, prisoners under the iron rule of Hitler Yamach Shemai. They both survived through Nisim and Ifnois, through miracles of miracles. Numbers etched on their arms to remind them forever of the horrors that they went through. And 40 years later, the master of the universe runs the world with such precision and perfection that the one shul that Menachem Reiner, visiting from Eretz Yisrael, would decide to go to that Shabbos morning was the shul that his long-lost friend, Shloimeh, not only attended, but was the Gabbai at. Yisrael betach b'Hashem. The Jewish people, we need to trust and believe with all of our hearts in Hashem. Ezra, he is our helper. Umaginam hu, and he will be our shield forever and ever and ever. And if we will be strong in our emunah, and we will stretch it with our bitachon, then whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us to do, we will do be'ez Hashem. And in that zechus, in that merit, Klal Yisrael, because of their faithlessness, was denied entrance to the land of Israel for 40 years. And it cost us Tisha B'Av, that in every single year for thousands of years, we have to sit on the floor and mourn on that night. Because our weakness in the world of Amunah and Bitachon. But if we will strengthen ourselves in our lives, in our Amunah, in our Bitachon, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu certainly will give us the gift that he's been waiting already for over 2,000 years since the temple was destroyed, to bring us the emunah shalema, with complete faith, faithfulness in Hashem and his great mercy and his great miraculous world and hand that he has, into Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, the holy city of Jerusalem, b'mheira v'yameinu. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and a wonderful week, and a wonderful month, and we should be zeichet to wonderful long lives of Amunah and Bitachon in Hashem.
Amen.